Now, forgiveness is talked a lot about, especially at the top end of the bag with drivers and fairway woods, but I don't think enough is said about it when it comes to the wedges. I've picked out some of the most forgiving wedges of 2024 that will help you get up and down more often from around the greens. Okay, so yes, these are some of the most forgiving wedges, but that doesn't mean they aren't some of the best looking wedges at the same time. Now, wedges are one of those that you really have to like the look of behind the ball, but also in your hand, because the more confidence inspiring they look, more likely you are to execute better golf shots. Now, I've picked out 3 of the most forgiving wedges that I think also feature some really good looks, what I think they look best in the bag, but also back down behind the ball. And the first of those is the Cleveland CBX4 zip core wedge. Now, this features the same zip core technology that is found in the likes of the RTX6 zip core wedge as well, which is a really cool thing to have on a more forgiving wedge. They have quite a thin top line considering it's actually an oversized head, but you can actually see the milling on the toe as well, which I think gives it that real premium look for a more forgiving head. Now, secondly, I'm going to go into the TaylorMade High Toe 3 wedge. Now, this is it is much more of a player's wedge, but it also features an abundance of forgiveness, and that is largely due to the high toe and the full face grooves. And these offer superb forgiveness, but they look great. You can get them in a couple of different colors. This is the copper kind of finish, but they also do it in a satin finish as well. Now, my third and kind of final pick on the looks category is the Cobra SBX wedge. Now, this again is a really forgiving wedge. It features full face technology, so it's got those grooves that run the whole way across. Now, funnily enough, this is actually a larger cavity back wedge with an insert behind, but it almost appears smaller at address than the likes of the high toe. So this might be perfect for that golfer that maybe is a better golfer who likes the look of a smaller wedge, but wants the forgiveness that is offered from a cavity back wedge. But if I was to pick a best looking, most forgiving wedge, it would be the Cleveland CBX4 zip core. I think the cavity back design is very well hidden, and so for that reason it still looks really premium and a player's wedge, but down behind the ball, the leading edge is just raised off the ground, so it will really boost confidence for those who might get a little steep or a little heavy on the ball occasionally, and this will help glide off the turf and help you hit better golf shots. Okay, now when you think about the most forgiving wedges, you probably think about larger heads and cavity backs, which may deter people from purchasing these down to the lack of feel, but that's where you may be wrong. Brands have made big strides to make sure that these wedges feel just as good as their players' wedges. Now, I've highlighted 3 that I think feel and sound superb, but for their own different ways. Now, the first of those is the Ping Glide 4.0 wedge. Now, this has a elastomer CTP insert in the back here. So the cavity is almost disguised. It still kind of looks like a forged wedge. It looks very much like the Glide Pro that we saw released a couple of years ago, and now they've moved on to the S159. And they're similar in shape actually down behind the ball as well. So that's something I really like that Ping do. But let's talk about the sound when we're actually hitting a golf shot. So the first shot I'm going to hit here, we're about 120 yards out here, so we're on the practice hole at Brockett Hall Golf Club in Welwyn Garden City. I'm going to hit one here, and you'll just be able to hear there's a slight difference compared to some of the more blade style wedges on the market, and that's a slightly louder sound. Let's just give one a whack. That's a lovely strike there. And that's exactly where these wedges work perfectly. Like I said, they're the most forgiving wedges on the market. And I've come in a little behind the ball there, but taken a really nice divot. It got through the turf really nicely. But the sound of it, it's actually a more muted sound when it goes through the ground. If I was to flick a ball up here and start doing some keepy-uppies, I don't know if you can hear that, it's quite tinny. Now, some people may like that, some people may not. Okay, now this is my next choice for sound and feel, and this is the Mizuno S23. Now this is really clever. So Mizuno have actually incorporated a cavity, but it's here towards the heel, and the reason for that being is that they can then shift weight out towards the toe, which then through impact allows the ball to stay on the face longer while the face is rotating. Now that's really key for golfers seeking more forgiveness, because the more time the ball is on the face, the more spin they're going to create, the more control they can create. But this has a slightly different feel and sound towards than the Ping Glide 4.0 that we just checked out. This is a much more muted sound, and it's got that classic Mizuno feel. Let's give one a hit here. Hopefully you'll notice the sound here, and this is picked up quite nicely, that it's much more muted than the Ping. Well, again, a very good strike. Nice divot again, but that was much more thud-like through the ball. And we don't often see the difference between kind of tinny and more thud-like sounds when it comes to wedges. We normally leave that to the drivers, but there is a distinct difference between these two. Now, the next wedge that I think actually falls perfectly in the middle is the Callaway CB. Now, this is a much larger head than the previous two. Those two are almost better player wedges in disguise with a cavity back, where this one, there's no hiding it. It's a big cavity back head. It's a large oversized face. And when this is set up down behind the ball, it looks distinctly different compared to the other two. This has full face grooves, which does make it appear much larger than it probably is. But there's urethane microspheres that are placed behind the back here on the insert, which actually dampen the sound and feel massively, take away all the vibrations, and allow for a really pleasant experience when this club glides through the turf. Let's give one a hit. And that is exactly why this wedge is in the most forgiving wedges, because I've actually caught that one a touch thin, touch skinny bottom groove, but as you can hopefully see there from the ball flight, it still climbed up nicely into that wind and sounded really well. Didn't leave my hands stinging, which most players' wedges would, and that's largely down to that insert. Right, so if I was to pick a winner for best sound and feel, it has to be the Mizuno S23. Now, this is available in two finishes, the cobalt finish like you see here, and also a satin finish. Two finishes that look superb behind the ball, but the sound and feel of this wedge is immense. It's got that soft Mizuno-like feel that we're used to with their irons, and for that reason, I think this is the best for sound and feel. Before we move on, if you like what you're seeing in this video, make sure you like the video and subscribe to Golf Monthly's YouTube channel so you don't miss any future videos. Okay, now a wedge can look as nice as it wants to look. It can sound and feel as good as you want it to sound and feel like, but ultimately if it doesn't perform, it probably isn't going to end up in your bag. Now, there's three that I've picked out that I think are standouts in terms of their performance, and as you can see from the data here to the right of me, I've tested all of these on a 50-yard pitch shot on a Rapsodo launch monitor. I've done it into a net to take out a few variables using a Titleist RCT golf ball, so the spin rates are as accurate as they can be. And the first wedge I'm going to mention is the Ram Easy Out. Now, this might be a surprise inclusion to many, but this wide sole is just a godsend sole. It's so wide, and it's in this strange kind of V-like position where, yes, if you want to open and close the face and be a bit more versatile with your wedge shots, it probably isn't for you. But if you're simply looking to just make sure that you get the ball on the green in one take, this is the option for you. Yes, the other wedges do have CNC milling and face blasting to ensure the duration of the grooves stay sharp for much longer. This doesn't have that, so it may deteriorate a lot quicker over time, but think about it. You're saving so much money in the first place. It's just such a great option. Now, the next wedge I'm going to talk about, again, is the Cobra SBX. Now, as you can see here, it produced the most spin by an absolute mile. These grooves are phenomenal, these snakebite grooves. It's got milling across the grooves as well. So you're getting spin no matter what condition you're playing in or where your ball may end up on the golf course, whether that's a tight lie, out the rough or out the bunker. I found this to be such a stable performer. The wide sole makes it so easy to get in and out of trouble, whether you're needing to hit a high shot, close the face over and maybe just nip one into the wind a little. But the wide sole also just glides through the turf perfectly. And my third option is once again the Cleveland CBX4 Zip Core wedge. Now, it's not as wide of a sole as some of the other models that I've talked about in this video, but it's wide enough that I feel like you get so much forgiveness on strikes that you might come in a touch behind the ball. It will really just help pop that ball up regardless. It's actually a more compact looking head than a lot of the other high forgiveness wedges on the market. But as you can see from the data, produce really solid spin and actually quite a high launch for a 50-yard shot. But if I was to pick a best performing wedge out of the most forgiving wedges in 2024, it would have to be the Cobra SBX. Now the reason for that is these grooves are 11% deeper and 40% sharper than previous models, so you generate spin no matter what lie you face on the golf course, but also the TPU insert on the back really helps with dampening vibrations and giving you really good feel when striking your shots. Okay, it's time that I pick my top 3 for the most forgiving wedges in 2024. Now I'm going to start with the Mizuno S23. This cavity back design really helps with forgiveness when striking from range, but also feels amazing around the green thanks to its smaller, more compact head. Now, the second of my options is the Cobra SBX. Like I've just said, it won my performance category because of the amount of spin it was generating from multiple lies. It also feels great when hitting from range, and it's got a really good sound to it as well. But if I was to pick one overall, it would have to be the Cleveland CBX4. Now this thing just looks superb, hides the cavity back really well, looks great behind the ball, and it looks small enough that it will inspire better players to use it who want a bit more forgiveness out of a wedge, but also it's big enough and large enough and confidence inspiring behind the ball that higher handicappers will benefit from this club too. If you've liked any of the products in today's video, the links to purchase them will be down in the description box below.